Slaves worked all the hours they were awake for their entire lives. In American history, in Egyptian history, in the rest of the world that had slaves, which is most of the world at some given point. I think like if they can do it, so can I. Now you're like, well, did they have a happy existence? Well, they didn't get to pick the work they did, but it means that you can work. That's if you have the cat behind you. You can work every hour of the day. I'm like, well, if you get to have the cheese and you get to eat the cheese the whole way you're going, then, I mean, there's the famous quote, the person who loves walking walks further than the person who loves the destination. Because we all know the happiness formula, which is when this happens, I'll be happy, right? When X, I'll be happy. Or if X, I'll be happy. When I'm putting that work in and doing the reps, like that's when I'm actually my most in flow and enjoying myself the most. And so it's actually a lie that I've been telling myself that like once the presentation goes well, I'll feel good. Because in some ways now I feel like when the presentation happens, I'll be disappointed because I won't get to do this anymore. I'll have to find something else to pick as a target so that I can get back into my Rocky cutscene. And so I think that has taken some time, and I've gotten better at it. I really do think I've gotten a lot better at it, at least recognizing, because the more times I've had W's and then realized that right afterwards I felt nothing, I had to think back of like, what are the things that I enjoyed most in my life? And it's always in pursuit. And I'm like, well then, why don't I set something really big, really far so I can be in pursuit for the longest period of time possible? And that's where I think a lot of people from the outside, they cast their expectations of life onto me and say, I wouldn't live my life that way. You're always working, you're always doing these things. But it's like, I'm actually always spending my time in pursuit, because in pursuit is my button for enjoyment. I want to find single behaviors that have many positive outcomes. So if you think about leverage as what you get for the effort you put in. If you have lots of leverage, then it means you can do one thing and get many big outcomes, right? Or one very big outcome. That's high leverage. If you put a lot of work in and get a very little bit out of it, you have low leverage. And so the highest form of leverage I think of are, what's one behavior or one skill that I can learn that then has many, many downstream impacts. And so and this is specifically, I'll say, for the 20-ish year olds, so 20 to 30, 20 to 35, if you can simply go to bed on time, you avoid drinking and getting in a DUI, you avoid early pregnancies, you avoid messing up your work because you don't sleep well, because you show up hungover the next day and then you don't get the career advancement that you want, or you get the judgments from your coworkers from the fact that you're responsible because you drank, even though it might have been responsible drinking, but you still smell like booze because it's in your system. If you go to bed on time, it's less likely that you'll get mugged. It's less likely you'll be in a car accident. Like there's all of these downstream impacts from one single behavior. You also have better quality sleep in general if you go to sleep at the same time every day over and over again. So that means that you have life extension, things that happen. You look younger. And so now 5 years, 10 years later, people are like, wow, you look so good for your age. There's all of these things from one central behavior, which is just fucking go to bed on time. And so if you want the action for this, you set your alarm for when you go to bed, not for when you wake up. If you set your alarm for when you go to bed, you will always be able to wake up naturally at whatever time you wake up. And it's very difficult to oversleep when you go to bed at 9, because you can get 8 hours of sleep and still be up by 5. I'm a big fan of being directionally correct rather than absolutely correct. And so I think what happens is most people are trying to find the perfect answer when they have no perspective from which to make a judgment. They're trying to find the perfect thing to do when they haven't done anything. So how would you have perspective to make a judgment? Like, if you try a lot of things in the beginning, which you have to know what your inputs, outputs are, decrease your action threshold enough with either a cheese or a cat, whatever you need. Most people have more cats than they have cheese in the beginning. So use the cat to start running towards something. And the thing is the rat, it's so simple. It's like there's cheese here. But what you really just need to know is that there's cheese out there. And there's a cat behind me for sure. And so if I just go anywhere away from the cat, I will have a higher likelihood of getting closer to the cheese. So many people want to project their idea of what they think your life should be like onto you. And it's just completely irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. Like if all I did, if I weren't married, right? Because people are like, okay, well, he is married and like I am in shape, but I also just like working out. But if I didn't have either of those things and all I did was work all day, more people would talk about the work-life balance thing for me than they currently do. And who cares? But one of the things that really motivates me, or one of my most powerful motivational frames, is thinking about the person that I want to become as the destination. And thinking like, I want to be bulletproof. I want to be bulletproof in these ways. I want to be bulletproof in my marriage. I want to be bulletproof in my business, etc. And I think about that man, whoever I want him to be. Like we said, hell is when you look at who you could have been and realize that you're not that person. And then I think, if I were to make that man, what would I put that man through to make him who he is? Like, it wouldn't be easy times. It wouldn't be quick wins. It wouldn't even be easy wins. It would be the toil and the struggle of achieving and reaching for things that are right out of grasp, that are right above my threshold, and continuing to do that to like lift the weight, to build the muscle, to break it down and do it over and over again, because like that's what creates the character traits that are the man that I want to be. And so when I'm going through those like really harder times, I like to think of like looking in my mental mirror of like, I'm making you. I'm not there yet, but I'm making you. And that has helped me get through some of the harder times. And from a gratitude perspective, my most powerful frame for gratitude has been thinking about my 85-year-old self, waking up as my 30-year-old self, and all of a sudden looking at Layla and be like, man, I remember when we were this young. And then looking out the window and be like, man, Vegas wasn't even developed. Like, there's no flying cars yet. Like, man, they were still used gas. Like, this is so cool. And I get out of bed and I'm like, man, my elbows don't hurt, my knees don't hurt, right? Because I'm thinking about what my 85-year-old self would think. And, we're talking about whatever, but it allows me to enjoy the mundane in a way that I know that I would give everything that I had when I was 85 to enjoy again. And it's a trippy frame, but like, if you can think like, what would 85-year-old me would be like? I'm just not, my body doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I actually have energy. Like, I can think clearly. I don't have brain fog because I'm 85, right? And that has been probably my single most powerful frame on feeling grateful, and allowed me to feel more present at times when I start to feel like I'm going through the motions and just like clicking in the routine and just like day after day after day, and they feel the same. That's been my biggest slowdown, where I can pull the reins and be like, mind you, it lasts a few minutes. Those moments, you can capture a moment independent from your surroundings, because a lot of times those moments, you're not thinking about the goal that you have, the meeting that you have, the prep that you have to do for some talk or some podcast or whatever it is. And I can't remember where I heard this, but they were talking about Gladiator, the movie. And the film opens with this like little bird on a bough, right? With like the leaves and whatnot. And then they zoom out from that little bird on the bough, and it's this disgusting war scene, right? And so it's kind of like micro, macro, of how, no matter how tough whatever the moment that you're going through is, if you can just take a picture of the corner of the room and look at the beauty in that, right, of being present in that moment, even if it's the suffering, right? Like, you get punched and you're spitting blood out, but it's like this moment that you capture, then all of a sudden like everything fades away and you are present. And so it can take this, what would be a brutal war scene of death and dismemberment, and the thing that makes it memorable is the zooming in on a detail. And so it's like, if you feel like you're going through life too fast, it's like, just look for a detail.